Reality Team TV, we're back. Joey, one of my favorite DJs. I also want to say, before we start this conversation, Joey, like I said off camera, congratulations in terms of like, you've been a DJ for 20 years. That's not a joke, and I understand like the DJing industry is full of ups and downs, like everything else in life, but to do anything in life for 20 years, I just want to say from the get-go, congratulations, mate. How you feeling, Joey?
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here on A Famous Sofa. 20 years is a long time to be doing anything, and like you said, it has been fraught with ups and downs. But yeah, I'm still here, still fighting a good fight, and loving life. It's doing what I love every day. You can't beat it. So although it's not all sunshine and rainbows, like you can't have the good without the bad. So yeah, it's I'm blessed to be sitting here with you now. So appreciate you, man.
All good, mate. You see, like, even for us to get straight into the conversation, like the support of like your fans / supporters, what does that mean to you? Because I understand over the years, like anything that we do, we need people to support us. It goes a very long way in terms of like what people support us along the way through the ups and downs, the good and the bad. What does the support from your supporters and the people really mean to you?
It's a really hard question to quantify because, well, the basic answer is without that support, I wouldn't be in the position I am. It boils down to that. I think a lot of artists, DJs, people in a creative space, they can get to an elevated position, and that can let the ego take over, and they can feel superior to those around them. Whereas I've tried my best to keep as grounded as possible over the years, and realise that I am nothing without my fans. All I would be doing is making music for myself, which is how I started out, and that's great because it's my passion, and that's why I started doing it. I've done it because I loved it, not to please other people, but the consequence that it does actually please other people, and it has done for 20 years, is it's really hard to quantify, and it's just mind-boggling that so many people across the world have been into what I've done. Some people have dipped in and out the career, some people have been at the start, some people are just new fans, and for every single one of them, no matter where they've appeared in my journey, I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart.
Over your DJing journey, you've had a lot of success in many different ways. You've played, like in big crowds, you've gone to so many different countries, like all of these amazing things over the last 20 years, yeah? Like, how would you describe your DJing journey up until this point? How would you describe the journey overall?
Wow, what a big question. That's a good question. When do interviews and podcasts and stuff, you get a lot of generic questions and stuff that you know the answer to instantly, but that's a real difficult one as well. You hit me with the heavy stuff, man. I like it. The journey, well, it's a perilous one to start with, and like I said about the fan base, it started with me just doing it for me, and that was the same with DJing, just buying records back in the 90s as a young teenager, with friends, and then putting on our first event when I was 15 years old, DJing at that, starting out as an MC as well. I know it doesn't sound like it, this terrible Scottish accent, but back home in the motherland, that's how it all started out in 1995, and so next year it'll be 30 years that I've been doing this completely, but it was in 2004 that I became pro, and when I say pro, it's a real vague term. It means that I quit my last job. Basically, for the next 5 or 6 years, I was eating beans and toast and just about surviving, just paying the bills. But still, the thing was, I was getting up every day and doing what I loved, and you can't put a price on that. I have had different periods of success, some bigger than others, and that's not just been in terms of like the gigs I've done or the crowds I've played to, but also financially. And coming from a poor background, going back to square one again hasn't been frightening, because I've been able to build my career up in different music genres, different aliases. Also, I guess the part of the longevity of doing it for 20 years is keep reinventing myself and reinventing my sound. That's one of the hardest things I think for a lot of people to do, because you can almost get captured in an era and people like a certain thing you do, they don't want you to change. And I have lost fans over the years because of that. I still get, fans from back in the day saying, why don't you make stuff like you did in 2005? And I'm like, because it's 2024, and, it's nice to kind of sometimes dip back into the older eras and stuff like that. But, as an artist and someone that's, my job, and I guess it's a job, but, my career is about continually trying to be inspired and excited by what I do. And if I don't continue to evolve, then that stops. And there has been periods in my career where that's happened, and it's been, been close to quitting, but I keep getting back up, and I'm still here, brother, still here.
You said you began your journey, when you was 15 years old, yeah? Like, you started obviously DJing, like, you started getting into, like, the DJing, like, scene, like, when you was 15 years old, / MCing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, I've grown up in North London, obviously, like, I've grown up around the grime, the grime era where, there was a lot of MCs, obviously. And, like, when I first met you, and big up DJ Wizkid as well, yeah? When I met you and, DJ Wizkid as well, like, I realised, like what you said as well, like, a lot of DJs started off also as well, like, kind of like MCing.
Yeah.
Like, can we speak a little bit, like, on that in terms of, like, like, the difference between a DJ / MC, if you get what I'm trying to say, like, for the people that don't understand.
Yeah, well, so for instance, in the rave scene anyway, started off where obviously the DJ would be there. DJ generally would have a microphone, and before mixing became a thing, the DJ would be primarily, you still get them at weddings and stuff like that, where they're like, the next track's from so and so, and and they're telling you, go up, the buffet's now open, stuff like that, and that's the real origins of MCing. And when it got to the rave days, the DJ was busy starting to mix, turntablism and mixing was coming to the fore, so having a separate person that could pick up the microphone and hype the crowd, that's how it started out. And then hyping the crowd came from, like, come on and make some noise and put your hands in the air, to MCs starting to bring lyrics and stuff like that. And MC stood for master of ceremonies. You were the person who was in charge of introducing the next act. And you get MCs in the comedy scene who they're the compere, the people who keep the crowd warm in the middle and then introduce the next act and stuff like that. So it's an extension of that. And like you mentioned, when it moves on to, you're talking about North London in more recent times, when you've got grime and stuff like that, and drill and all these kind of genres, where MCing went from potentially, I guess, from garage and grime and hip hop and stuff like that. That's when MCing went from a more hype thing to lyrics, and you've seen success from, like, garage artists getting into the charts and stuff, like all these kind of acts who are starting to get, like, chart success by putting actual songs together rather than just, like, hyping up over the beats. So it's a kind of interesting transition, and I almost went full circle when I started doing my Destructive Tendencies project. I started getting back in the microphone more and recording lyrics on the songs. So rather than just performing, like, kind of freestyle flow and hyping the crowd as I worked, I would be recording more kind of theme-based songs that I would then perform live as we DJ'd, and I would, like, do the lyrics live over the microphone as well, and that created a more of a show that other artists weren't doing at the time, when we were kind of really kind of making headway when we were playing in Europe a lot. So that was me kind of going full circle from when I started it in the 90s to the kind of 2000, I guess 10, 11 through until maybe just before the pandemic, when I was, like, getting back on the mic more and more. So it's a a real distinction. And as we get to these days, like now, there's even, I guess, less MCs in terms of the circles that I move in. I still do some old school sets or older sets where we have MCs who do more lyrical based stuff, but generally the kind of shows that I'm playing these days is Joey Riot. It kind of reinvented the brand again. I'm taking up the mic as well as DJing, so I'm hyping the crowd. I'm not doing lyric based stuff like I used to. But I'm just kind of taking control. Those lulls that happen are just the egging the crowd on when they need it. You just need that little kick up in energy. All those years of doing it has given me that kind of base that I know when to say the right thing and when to shut the hell up. That's an important thing for MCs. Sometimes you need to know when to you know.
Yeah. So you see that this DJ, you know, you becoming a DJ, yeah. Obviously, it's taking you on this incredible journey, yeah. Like, absolutely incredible journey, yeah. Like, but when was like, you see, you know, usually for all of us, we get that moment where we discover something. Like, for example, for me, like when I was growing up, I discovered football. That was the first thing that I've ever fell in love with, and obviously slowly started getting into it, learning about it, and then before you know, I said to myself, this is what I want to be when I grow up, you know. Like, for you, like, what was that first moment when you discovered, like, first and foremost, like the first moment when you discovered, like, DJs, like, you know, this thing, like DJing, it exists, and two, like, what was that first moment when you realized, you know what, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? You got what I mean?
Yeah. That's a very simple question. So, say me and my friend were buying records for a year or two. And I'm trying to remember the year, it was 94 or 95. I'd been to some like under 18s events, and we'd put on our own events as well. But when I went to my first ever like proper rave, which was an over 18s event, there was I used to have like DJs playing, but then you'd also have like live PAs, which was like, almost like a band. You'd have like the keyboard set up, you'd have somebody coming on singing, so they would be like, you'd have them breaking up the night, and there'd be, maybe 3 or 4 of them, and then DJs in between. That was the way the Scottish scene was back in the 90s. And the first one of those I went to was an event in the Barrowlands, and it was a band called The Time Frequency at the time, TTF. And when I seen them on stage, and the whole night, in fact, as soon as I went to the rave, I loved being at the rave because the vibe in there, because growing up in the East End, west of Scotland, East End of Glasgow, in that kind of area, it's a pretty rough place, and it's quite a scary place to grow up for a young timid boy that I was. A lot of violence, a lot of angry people. It had quite a reputation back then, maybe not as bad now, but going out in town was a scary prospect for me being 15, 16 years old. When I went to that event, like it was just completely different from going to a pub or going to a bar or going to any other sort of club night. Everybody was like so respectful. There was a lot of love. There was no fighting. Everyone was there just for the music, and I loved that. That was the part that glued me in straight away. I was like, okay, so this is where I belong, first of all. And then I seen the guys come on stage, and I was like, this is great here, but I want to be up there because that looks fucking amazing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That looked just the next level. So it was literally from my first ever proper gig that I went to as a punter. Yeah. Within minutes, I was like, right, I'm in the wrong place. I need to be on stage. Yeah.
And like talking about Scotland, like your upbringing, where you grew up. Once again, like obviously I've grown up in this area, North London. Yeah. And obviously over the years, people know, like, for me, I usually say anywhere, you can go to any part of the world, there's always a good part and a bad part. You understand? Yeah. But sometimes certain people feel like some countries or certain areas, you get me, like some places don't really have. Yeah. You know what I mean? Can we speak? Just slowly going back. Obviously, like just quickly for people that don't know, you're from Scotland, right? Yeah. You're Scottish. For the people that might not be able to pick up the accent, and also never. But to say in terms of like your childhood, like how was like you going through that journey of like growing up in the area in Scotland that you grew up in? How was that for you? Like what kind of things did you experience, and overall, like what did you take away from that after you became a man, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind talking about it. I mean, I've been through like a bunch of therapy and stuff to deal with it. It was rough, man. It was rough growing up there. At the time, you don't realise it because it's all you know. And it's only when, you move away from what you're used to and you see how other people live and you're just like, that's not normal. And the problem, I guess, was as well, it wasn't just me going through tough times. It was like the people around about me, my friends, just anybody that I knew was also going through similar stuff, alcoholism, violence, just poverty, all these things that kind of blighted a lot of people during the 90s, not just Glasgow, but we did up in Scotland and Glasgow, we almost felt forgotten by the government back in the 80s and 90s, you know, when Margaret Thatcher came to power, and it was a bit, the whole rave scene was a big kind of almost like resistance movement against that. I was talking to someone, I'm sure we'll get into the teaching at the college just across the road there later, but I was talking to someone today, one of the students, and she was talking about how drill was a big kind of almost like antithesis, a big you know, FU to seeing how society was changing. You know, youth centres were closing down, there's nothing for young people to do, and you know that when you've got nothing to do, and you know there's going to be kickback, and that's what happened. You know, when I was growing up, the kickback was like community centres were closing. You know, there was no infrastructure where I grew up. There was nothing for the youth to do. So what do you do when you're a young boy full of testosterone? You got up to mischief. You know, gangs, fights. You know, just stupid stuff, because there is nothing to do. And you know, I think it's unfair that people that grow up in underprivileged areas get tarred with this brush, being thugs and criminals and everything else. It's like, you know, you grow up in, you know, broken households. You know, you don't have that family connection. You know, my dad's an alcoholic, so he was missing a lot of my life growing up. You didn't have a father figure. You found your family on the streets. It was your friends that became your family, and you know, it depends who those friends are, what that family ends up looking like, and how your life ends up turning out. You could have, you know, been the nicest kid growing up, and then you fall in with the wrong crowd, but they're the people that look out for you, and that determines how, you know, the rest of your life goes. I'm just very lucky that the friends that I did find were involved in a music scene that was just so kind of loving and giving, and you know, there was a definitely a to that as well. Hey. That's all right. Yeah, there was definitely a dark side to that as well. You know, as a lot of you know, music cultures do have, you know, with drugs and, you know, alcohol and criminal elements getting involved and all that side of things. But you know, that wasn't none of that side of the stuff appealed to me, because it was going on in you know, day-to-day life so much. You know, you just walk down the streets and you see all that. So it was a real, I think, like a lot of people that do anything outside their normal life, they're looking for an escape. And that was escapism at its finest. You were just going somewhere where you knew there was not going to be any hassle. You knew there was going to be trouble. Everybody was there for the same reason. It was for the love of the music, and the atmospheres that were created back then they're just unparalleled. There's some like great events and stuff now, but I don't think those times can ever be created, because it's just different times now. I mean, we're filming this on an iPhone, which is bonkers, man. You know, like we didn't even have mobile phones when I was going out in the 90s. It wasn't a thing. You know, we had the old dial-up numbers, and you know, you'd have to phone a friend's house to find out what's going on, or you'd maybe walk like 3 miles to knock your friend's door, and then he's not in, and then you just walk all the way back home, man. So getting together and doing things like that was a much more of an effort. And to be honest, I'm glad that we didn't have iPhones, etc. then, because some of the stuff we got up to, I'm glad that it was not documented and on social media, because my career might have turned out differently, but so be it. Here we are, my friend.
Yeah. A lot of these areas that we grew up in, like you either got like, you know, like two choices in it: to get sucked in and, you know, go in a certain direction where you can end up obviously either committing a crime, killing someone, or, you know, like getting into drugs, becoming addicted, or to go in prison, right? Or the other way, where it's like you can understand the environment that you're in and to make a decision for yourself to say, you know what, regardless of this shithole that I've been raised in, that, you know, I've got friends and family in this shithole, but I'm not gonna allow it, you know, to swallow me in and end my life. Like for you, like, how did you get out of that? Like, regardless of everything that was surrounding you when you was growing up, everything that was happening, like for you, like, how did you manage to still get out of that to become a very successful DJ?
Yeah, well, it wasn't easy. I'll tell you that much. Like, you know, the music. I always say the music saved my life, and it genuinely did. I can't you know, say that enough. It really did, from the perspective of, like you say, you could go down two paths, and I chose the path to, you know, go out to parties and stuff like that, which was channeling my energy in a somewhat positive way. You know, there was negatives to that as well. You know, like never going into work on a Monday was one of them. I couldn't hold down a job, like at all, because I was partying for days. But you know, that's the thing as well. Like leaving school and stuff, I was just like, you know, I had the plans when I was younger to go to university and everything, and I did too. Not bad in school, grade wise and stuff, and I probably could have went down that road, but I was smart enough to understand at that young age that I'm too young to make a decision that's going to change the rest of my life. I want to enjoy myself for a bit, and when I figure my life out, then I'll figure it out. Much to the dismay of people around about me that cared about me, you know. But that's what I done. And it was actually quite an unfortunate series of events that led to me leaving Scotland. First of all, I got made redundant from my job, which, you know, was I was working as a forklift driver at the time, and working in an office supplies factory. Really tedious work, but I worked with great people, but worked like back shifts, so we started at 12 in the afternoon, we could finish at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night sometimes, just till the job was done. Luckily I had a great bunch of people I worked with, but I ate up all my day, every day, and when we got made redundant, the company shut down. I got a small bit of money, I got a couple of grand. And with that, I decided to buy a computer and a set of speakers. Nothing fancy, but just something to kind of really push the musical side that I'd been dabbling with for years. And then, you know, and more unfortunate stuff happened. There was like local gang violence and stuff that was starting to affect my life. And it encroached it so much that I literally, you know, back to that scenario, you can go down two paths. It was like, I'm either going to end up in jail or dead, or I can leave. So, you know, I've literally told the students at the college this story, and, you know, I've said it a few times before. I almost had to flee out of Glasgow. I fled the place, kind of fearing for my life, fearing for my future. And I met a good friend, who became a good friend, a guy from Barrow-in-Furness, my buddy Thyan Brody, who kind of offered me a way out. He gave me he said he could get me a flat in Barrow-in-Furness, which is just in the northwest of England rather. And it was just, I would take anything at that point just to get out of where I was. And, you know, I was at a point in my life where I'd left home. I'd left home years before that, my parental home, but I left, you know, my support network, I guess, anything I had, all friends, family, everybody. I moved into this flat above a smelly little flat above a shop, on a place called Barrow Island. I was like, I'd lost my job, so I was like, had to sign on the dole, and I can remember we had a big party before I left, so I'm like lying on the floor of this flat. I've got like all my furniture and stuff that I'd packed up in a van and brought down with me. There's like no carpet on the floor. I'm lying on the floorboards, literally crying, just like, what is happening in my life? And, you know, I say this to a lot of people, you know, you know, it's the truth, but also it can be quite an inspirational story. When you're on the ground and you're on your back and you're at the lowest point in your life, I was literally looking at the ceiling thinking, like, the only way is up, like, both literally and metaphorically. Like, I can't get any lower than this. Like, I'm on the ground crying, so you know, wipe down those tears, and I'm like, look, I've got a computer, I've got my speakers, I've got time. That was the big thing. I was like, I've not got a job. You know, there was a joke going around where we lived, like, you know, somebody was like, you working? You'd be like, no, I'm on the dole. You'd be like, the money's terrible, but the hours are great. You know, so which is true, and that's one of the things that I kind of decided was like, yeah, I've got no money, I've got no support network, but what I have got is I've not got this fear of you know, for my safety. I'm away from all of the trouble that was around me. I've got no distractions in terms of like my social group and other things. Like, you know, no disrespect to them, still love all of those guys and people that were in my life, but that meant that I was like laser focused then on what I had to do, and it was like there was no going back. It was like I made the decision, I'm going to keep going until I kind of make it, and I set myself some goals. First one was stay in every day and produce music. don't take a job, no matter what the job centre say to me. I ain't taking work unless it's something that I really want to do that's based in the music industry. And I gave myself the goal of getting a record out in 2 years. It's back when they released vinyl on the regular. And I managed to release my first record in a year's time. So, a year's from being on my floor in tears, looking at the ceiling, to a year later, having my first record release, I was back on the floor crying again, but this time tears of joy. And that was the first kind of goal of a series of goals that are still ever evolving, and you don't ever really feel like you've made it. You know, I get asked that a lot, like, when do you feel like you've made it? And I think the first time that, you know, I never really felt like it. You know, people say, oh, you're living a dream and stuff like that, but you're kind of, when you're in it, it doesn't really feel like that. You just keep going. But, you know, with hindsight, I can clearly say to people, like, you've made it when you are making a living off of doing what you love, no matter how little that is. And, you know, at that point, you know, 2004, when I quit my last job, you know, I had 2 pennies to rub together. I could just about pay for my bills. You know, I was eating the bare minimum, like terrible food, you know, beans and toast, frozen pizza. But I'm waking up every day and I'm like, all I have to do is make music and like try and get gigs. And, you know, those are some of the happiest times of my life, because it was like, there was a freedom attached to that as well, because there was no expectations, there was no pressure. It was like, it was up to me what happened next, and you write your own story from then. So it's like the hero's journey began from that point.